The thunder of hooves against the hard-packed earth cut through the evening air as August O'Connor rode in with his 3 sons trailing behind, dust clouds billowing in their wake. It was 1878 in the unforgiving Arizona Territory, and the O'Connor Ranch stood as a testament to one man's determination and the legacy he hoped to pass down. But that legacy was becoming tarnished with each passing day, as the boys' wild spirits seemed impossible to tame. Luke, Matthew, Jedediah. "Get those horses settled for the night," August called out, his voice carrying across the yard as he dismounted his chestnut stallion. At 43, he still had the strength and presence of a younger man, despite the silver threading through his dark hair and beard. Luke, the eldest at 24, spat into the dirt. "I'm heading into town. Horses can wait." "Like hell they can," August growled, squaring his shoulders. "Those animals worked hard today, and they'll be tended to before anyone goes anywhere." Matthew, 22 and already showing his father's stubborn nature, stepped between them. "I'll take care of Smoke and Thunder. Luke can handle the others before he goes." "I ain't handling nothing," Luke retorted, his hand resting dangerously close to his holstered pistol. "I'm sick of being ordered around like some hired hand." Jedediah, the youngest at 18, hung back, his blue eyes darting between his father and brothers. Though he still had boyish features, the past 2 years of hard ranching had broadened his shoulders and hardened his expression. "You'll do as I say while you're on my land," August said, his voice low and threatening. Within moments, the argument escalated. Luke shoved his father, Matthew jumped to August's defense, and Jedediah reluctantly joined the fray when Luke grabbed him by the collar. It had become a nightly ritual, tensions building throughout the day of working side by side, only to explode once they returned to the ranch house. The fights had grown worse since Sarah, August's wife and the boy's mother, had passed from fever 3 years prior. The sounds of the scuffle, grunts, curses, and the thud of fists meeting flesh carried across the property. It was only when August's foreman, Ellis, fired a warning shot into the air that they finally separated, each man breathing heavily and glaring at the others. "This ends now," August declared, though they all knew it would begin again tomorrow. "Luke, you're staying put tonight. Matthew, Jedediah, tend to those horses and then get cleaned up for supper." The next morning brought no reconciliation, only tense silence as they ate breakfast and prepared for another day of work. The O'Connor Ranch was substantial, 800 acres of prime grazing land with nearly 300 head of cattle. It required constant attention, especially with rustlers becoming more of a problem in the territory. As they rode out to check the northern fence line, August spotted a wagon approaching on the main road that cut through their property. It was unusual to have visitors this far out, especially with the nearest town, Willow Creek, being 15 miles away. "Matthew, ride out and see who that is," August instructed, his hand instinctively moving to the rifle mounted on his saddle. Matthew nodded and spurred his horse toward the approaching wagon. The rest of the O'Connor men watched as he intercepted the vehicle, spoke briefly with the driver, and then waved for his family to approach. As they drew closer, August could see it was a woman driving the wagon alone, a foolish and dangerous undertaking in these parts. She was perhaps in her late 20s, with auburn hair tucked under a bonnet and a determined set to her jaw. "Says her name is Clara Patterson," Matthew reported as his father and brothers arrived. "Claims she's the new schoolteacher for Willow Creek." August studied the woman, noting her city clothes and the way she held the reins with uncertain hands. "Miss Patterson, you're a good 10 miles off course if you're heading to Willow Creek." Clara straightened her spine. "I'm aware of that now, Mr. O'Connor. It seems my directions were less than accurate. I was hoping you might point me in the right direction." Her voice was melodious and soft, with an Eastern accent that instantly marked her as an outsider. But there was a quiet strength in her tone that caught August's attention. "It'll be dark in a few hours," he said, glancing at the sun's position. "These roads aren't safe for a woman traveling alone, even in daylight. You'd best come back to the ranch and set out fresh in the morning." Clara hesitated, clearly weighing her options. "I wouldn't want to impose." "It's no imposition," August replied, though his sons exchanged skeptical glances behind him. "We can't in good conscience send you off alone when night's coming." The decision made, August instructed Luke to ride alongside the wagon while he and the younger boys continued their fence inspection. It wasn't until they returned to the ranch house near sunset that August realized what a disruption Clara's presence would cause to their routine. The house was large but rustic, built by August and his late wife when they first claimed the land 15 years ago. It had been expanded as the family grew, but since Sarah's passing, the interior had fallen into a state of neglect that August suddenly found embarrassing. "I apologize for the condition of things," he mumbled as he showed Clara inside. "We've been without a woman's touch for some time." Clara surveyed the main room dusty furniture, dishes piled in the dry sink, boots and gear scattered about. "No need for apologies, Mr. O'Connor. I understand how difficult it can be to maintain a household alongside ranching duties." There was no judgment in her tone, only a simple acknowledgement of their circumstances that somehow made August feel both understood and ashamed simultaneously. "Luke, clear that table of your gear. Matthew, fetch water for washing. Jedediah, you're on firewood duty," August instructed, watching as his sons reluctantly complied, casting curious glances at their visitor. Clara set down her small traveling bag. "Please, allow me to help prepare the evening meal. It's the least I can do to thank you for your hospitality." Before August could protest, she had removed her bonnet and rolled up her sleeves, moving toward the kitchen area with a sense of purpose. The 4 O'Connor men watched in stunned silence as she quickly assessed what was available and began organizing the space. "I'll need onions, potatoes if you have them, and whatever meat you were planning for tonight," she said matter-of-factly. "We've got venison that needs using," Jedediah offered, speaking directly to her for the first time. "Shot it 2 days ago," Clara nodded. "Perfect. Now is there coffee?" The simple question sparked an unusual scramble as all 3 brothers moved to locate the coffee tin, each seemingly eager to be the one to provide what she needed. August watched this transformation with interest, noting how Clara's calm demeanor and gentle requests achieved what his barked orders could not. As Clara worked, she hummed softly, occasionally asking questions about the ranch and the surrounding area. August found himself joining her in the kitchen, slicing the venison as directed while his sons tended to chores without argument for the first time in months. "You have a beautiful property, Mr. O'Connor," Clara commented as she stirred a pot of stew that already smelled better than anything they'd eaten in years. "Built it from nothing," he replied, feeling an unexpected surge of pride. "My wife and we came out here when there was nothing but promise and hard work ahead." Clara's expression softened. "Your sons mentioned you lost her. I'm very sorry." August nodded, unused to speaking of Sarah with anyone, let alone a stranger. 3 years now, fever took her quick. "Boys haven't been the same since. I haven't either, truth be told." "Grief changes us," Clara said quietly. "I lost my parents in a fire 2 years ago. It's why I decided to take this teaching position out west, a fresh start." There was something in the way she spoke, honest and straightforward, yet gentle, that made August want to continue the conversation. But Jedediah interrupted, bringing in an armload of firewood and announcing that he'd cleaned out a space in the storage room where Clara could sleep. The meal that night was unlike any they'd had in years. The food was simple but prepared with care, and more remarkable still was the atmosphere. Clara asked questions that drew even the reticent Luke into conversation. She spoke of her journey west, the sights she'd seen, and her hopes for teaching in Willow Creek. "I've been told there are 15 children of school age," she explained, "though apparently some of the ranching families keep their children home to work." "Schooling's important," August said firmly. "Sarah made sure our boys had their letters and figures, even when we were establishing the ranch." Luke scoffed. "Fat lot of good it's done us, still just pushing cows around." August's expression darkened, but before he could respond, Clara spoke. "Education isn't just about finding different work, Mr. O'Connor," she addressed Luke directly. "It's about understanding the world around you, making informed decisions, appreciating beauty in unexpected places." She smiled slightly. "And perhaps calculating exactly how much your cattle are worth so no one can cheat you at market." Matthew chuckled, and even Luke's mouth twitched toward a smile. "Our ma would have liked you," Jedediah said suddenly. "She was always saying similar things." A look of grief passed briefly across August's face, but it was quickly replaced by something warmer as he watched Clara engage with his sons. For the first time in too long, there were no arguments at the dinner table. After the meal, August expected the usual pattern. Luke would head to his room or into town for drinking and cards. Matthew would retreat to the barn to work on some project, and Jedediah would lose himself in one of the few books they owned. Instead, all three lingered at the table as Clara shared stories of her journey west and asked about local landmarks. "There's Echo Canyon about 5 miles north," Matthew offered. "Best view in the territory at sunrise." "And Widow's Creek for fishing," Jedediah added eagerly. "I could show you sometime if you wanted to see it," Clara smiled. "I would enjoy that very much, though I'm afraid I'll need to get settled in Willow Creek first. The term starts in just over a week." August watched this interaction with a mixture of amazement and something that felt surprisingly like jealousy. His boys hadn't shown this much animation or interest in anything for years. And here they were, practically falling over themselves to impress this soft-spoken woman who had appeared in their lives mere hours ago. When it came time to retire for the night, August insisted Clara take his room while he would sleep on a cot in the main room. She protested, but he was firm. "It's the only proper thing, Miss Patterson. I insist." As the household settled into silence, August lay awake, staring at the rough-hewn beams of the ceiling. The woman's presence had changed something in his home, stirred up memories of Sarah, yes, but also reminded him of what they'd been missing. Not just a woman's touch around the house, but the gentle influence that balanced the rough edges of their masculine world. The next morning, Clara was up before dawn, already preparing coffee and a simple breakfast when August emerged from his makeshift bed. She had found an old apron of Sarah's and wore it over her travel-worn dress, her hair neatly braided and pinned. "You didn't need to do this," August said, feeling awkward as he accepted the cup she offered. "I enjoy being useful," Clara replied, "and it's the least I can do after your hospitality." One by one, the brothers appeared, drawn by the smell of coffee and bacon. Each seemed to have made an effort with their appearance, faces clean-shaven, hair combed, wearing their less worn shirts. August barely recognized his own sons. "I'll be escorting Miss Patterson to Willow Creek this morning," he announced as they ate. "Luke, you'll supervise moving the herd to the eastern pasture." Matthew and Jedediah finished that fence repair. To his surprise, there were no arguments, only nods of acknowledgement. Luke even added, "We'll handle it, Pa, take your time." The journey to Willow Creek would take most of the day. August insisted on driving Clara's wagon himself, while she sat beside him on the bench seat. As they set out, he found himself unnaturally conscious of her presence, the subtle scent of lavender that clung to her clothes, the way she occasionally brushed a strand of hair from her face. "Your boys are very capable young men," Clara observed as they traveled. "You must be proud of them," August grunted. "They're strong workers when they're not at each other's throats. Been like that since their mother died. Nothing but fighting." Clara was quiet for a moment. Grief expresses itself differently in everyone. Some turn inward, others lash out. "And which did you do, Miss Patterson, when you lost your parents?" She looked at him, surprised by the direct question. "Both, I suppose. I was teaching in Boston when it happened. I threw myself into my work during the day, barely speaking to anyone. Then I'd return to my room and cry until I had no tears left." Her honesty caught him off guard. "The boys and we never really talked about Sarah after she was gone. Maybe that was my mistake." "It's never too late to start," Clara said gently. The conversation shifted to lighter topics as they continued their journey, the challenges of ranching in the territory, Clara's expectations for her new position, the small town that would be her home. August found himself speaking more than he had in years, drawn out by Clara's attentive questions and genuine interest. By the time they reached Willow Creek in the late afternoon, August felt a reluctance to part ways that surprised him. The town was small but growing, a main street lined with basic establishments, a church, and the newly built schoolhouse where Clara would teach and live in the attached quarters. The town mayor, a portly man named Simmons, greeted them eagerly. "Miss Patterson, we'd begun to worry when you didn't arrive yesterday. I see our local rancher came to your rescue. Mr. O'Connor and his sons were kind enough to offer shelter when I lost my way," Clara explained. "I'm afraid I've delayed them in their work." "Nonsense," August said. "It was our pleasure." Mayor Simmons showed Clara to the schoolhouse, with August carrying her trunk. The teachers' quarters were small but neat, one room with a bed, desk, and small stove, attached to the main classroom. "It's perfect," Clara declared, looking around with genuine enthusiasm. "I can't wait to prepare it for the children." Mayor Simmons beamed. "Well, I'll leave you to get settled. We're all very excited to have a proper teacher in Willow Creek at last." He tipped his hat to August. "Much obliged for bringing her safely, O'Connor." When they were alone, August found himself reluctant to leave. "Will you be all right here? Town has some rough elements, especially on weekends," Clara smiled. "I'll be fine, Mr. O'Connor. I may look delicate, but I assure you I can handle myself." "August," he said suddenly. "My name is August." "August," she repeated, and something in the way she said it made his heart beat faster. "Thank you for everything. Perhaps you might bring your boys to town sometime. I'd enjoy seeing them again." "Maybe we will," he replied, though ranching rarely left time for social calls. He tipped his hat. "Good day, Miss Patterson." "Clara," she corrected with a smile. "If I'm to call you August, then you must call me Clara." The ride back to the ranch felt longer without her company. August found his thoughts continually drifting to Clara, her smile, her gentle voice, the way she'd transformed their chaotic home for one brief evening. He told himself it was merely the novelty of female company after so long, nothing more. But when he arrived back at the ranch and found his sons had completed all their assigned tasks without conflict, he realized something fundamental had shifted. Over supper that night, when Luke asked, "How'd the schoolteacher settle in?" August recognized genuine interest in his son's voice. "She seemed pleased with the arrangements," August replied cautiously. "Says she'd welcome a visit from all of us sometime." Matthew nodded. "Might be nice to see the town. Been months since we went for anything but supplies." "She's a fine woman," Jedediah added thoughtfully. "Reminds me a bit of Ma, not in looks, but in how she is." The comparison hung in the air, and August expected one of the older boys to ridicule Jedediah for the sentiment. Instead, Luke nodded slowly. "She's got that same way of making you want to be better," he admitted. "Less of a fool." The days that followed brought an unexpected peace to the O'Connor ranch. The nightly fights ceased, replaced by conversations around the dinner table. The brothers still had their disagreements, but they no longer escalated to blows. August found himself wondering if Clara's brief presence had somehow reminded them all of what family could be. 2 weeks passed before August had reason to return to Willow Creek. They needed supplies, and normally he would send one of the boys, but this time he decided to go himself. "Might stop by the schoolhouse," he mentioned casually as he prepared to leave. "See how Miss Patterson is faring." His sons exchanged knowing glances that he pretended not to notice. "Tell her we said hello," Matthew suggested with a barely suppressed smile. August found Clara in the midst of her school day. Through the open window, he could hear her clear voice guiding the children through their reading lesson. He waited outside, hat in hand, until the noon break when the children spilled out into the yard. Clara spotted him immediately, her face lighting up with a smile that made August's chest tighten. "Mr. O'Connor, what a pleasant surprise." "August," he reminded her. "I was in town for supplies. Thought I'd see how you were settling in." She invited him inside, where they sat at her desk while the children played outside. Clara looked different, more confident in her role. Her cheeks flushed with enthusiasm as she showed him the students' work and described her plans for the term. "The town has been welcoming for the most part," she told him, "though I gather some folks were expecting someone older and more stern." August smiled. "You have a way about you that doesn't need sternness to command respect." The compliment brought a blush to her cheeks. "And how are your boys?" "Still fighting every night." "Actually, no," August admitted. "There's been a change since your visit." "A good change." He hesitated before adding, "They asked me to convey their regards." Their conversation flowed easily, and August found himself lingering far longer than he'd intended. When it was time for the afternoon lessons to begin, he reluctantly took his leave, but not before Clara suggested, "Perhaps you and your sons might come to town for the Founders' Day celebration next Saturday. There will be a picnic and dance." August couldn't remember the last time he'd attended a social gathering. "I'm not much for dancing," he said gruffly. Clara's smile was gently teasing. "Then perhaps you could just watch the dancing. The boys might enjoy it." He found himself agreeing before he could think of a reason to refuse. When he returned to the ranch and mentioned the invitation, he was surprised by his son's enthusiasm. "A dance," Luke said with interest. "Been ages since we had any proper fun." "I'll need a new shirt," Matthew declared, examining his worn clothing with sudden dissatisfaction. "Do you think Miss Patterson will dance with us?" Jedediah asked, a hint of boyish eagerness in his voice. August felt a flare of something that took him a moment to recognize as jealousy. The feeling unsettled him. He had no claim on Clara, and at 43, he was surely too old to be entertaining such thoughts about a woman in her 20s. The week leading up to the Founders' Day celebration brought an unusual energy to the O'Connor household. The boys took extra care with chores, ensuring they would be able to attend without work hanging over their heads. August even caught Luke practicing a few dance steps in the barn one evening, though he pretended not to notice to spare his son's pride. When Saturday arrived, all 4 men dressed in their best clothes, cleaned and pressed for the occasion. They rode into Willow Creek together, arriving as the festivities were beginning in the town square. Clara spotted them immediately and hurried over, looking radiant in a blue dress that matched her eyes. "You came. I'm so pleased." August couldn't take his eyes off her. "Wouldn't miss it," he said, his voice gruffer than he intended. The day unfolded with food, games, and music. To August's surprise, his sons integrated easily into the celebration, with Luke engaging a group of cowboys in horseshoe pitching, Matthew deep in conversation with the blacksmith about some mechanical contraption, and Jedediah helping Clara organize games for the younger children. As the sun began to set, lanterns were lit around the square and the band started playing for dancing. August stood at the edge of the gathering, watching as Clara danced first with the mayor, then with several other townsmen. When Jedediah approached her for a dance, August felt that same twinge of jealousy, though he knew it was foolish. "She keeps looking over at you," a voice said beside him. August turned to find Luke watching him with unusual insight. "Miss Patterson. She's danced with half the men here, but she keeps looking your way." August shifted uncomfortably. "Don't be ridiculous. I'm old enough to be her father," Luke snorted. "Not quite, and age matters less out here than back east." He nudged his father. "Ma would want you to be happy again, you know." The simple statement struck August to the core. Before he could respond, Clara appeared before them, slightly breathless from dancing. "Are you going to stand here all evening, August?" she asked with a teasing smile. "Or might I convince you to join one dance?" Luke grinned and slipped away, leaving them alone. August fumbled for an excuse. "I told you I'm not much of a dancer." "Neither am I, truly," Clara admitted, "but I find I enjoy it anyway." She held out her hand. "Just one dance." Something in her expression, a mixture of hope and vulnerability, broke through his resistance. He took her hand and led her to the edge of the dancing area, just as the band began a slower tune. August had last danced with Sarah, and the memory of it made his movements stiff at first. But Clara's hand was warm in his, her other resting lightly on his shoulder, and gradually he relaxed into the simple steps. "Your boys seem to be enjoying themselves," Clara observed, glancing toward Matthew, who was now dancing with a young woman from town. "They're different since meeting you," August said quietly. "Calmer, more like themselves before we lost Sarah." Clara's eyes softened. "I didn't do anything special." "You did, though," August insisted. "You reminded us what we'd been missing." A woman's voice in the house, yes, but more than that. A gentle presence that makes us want to be better men. The music continued, but Clara had stopped moving, looking up at him with an expression he couldn't quite read. "August." Whatever she was about to say was interrupted as the dance ended, and people around them applauded. August reluctantly released her hand, suddenly aware of how close they had been standing. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of conversations and more dancing, with August watching as each of his sons took turns partnering with Clara. She was clearly popular with the townspeople, her easy manner and genuine interest in others drawing people to her. As the celebration wound down, August found a moment alone with her again. "We should be heading back to the ranch," he said reluctantly. "It's a long ride." Clara nodded. "Of course. Thank you for coming. It meant a great deal to me, perhaps." August hesitated, then pressed on. "Perhaps you might visit the ranch again sometime. Sunday dinner, maybe, if your duties allow." Her face brightened. "I would like that very much." The invitation became a regular arrangement over the following weeks. Every Sunday, August would ride into town to collect Clara, bringing her to the ranch for the day. The O'Connor men took turns preparing the meals, their cooking skills improving with practice, and the house gradually became more presentable as they made efforts to clean and repair things that had long been neglected. Clara's influence extended beyond the weekly visits. The fighting that had once dominated the ranch had disappeared completely, replaced by a cooperative spirit that August hadn't seen in his sons since before Sarah's death. Even more surprising was the way they began to speak of their mother, sharing memories and stories that had been too painful to mention before. "Remember how Ma used to sing while she worked?" Matthew said one evening as they sat around the fireplace after Clara had returned to town. Didn't matter what she was doing, cooking, mending, gardening, she always had a song. "Clara does that too," Jedediah observed. "Different songs, but the same habit." August nodded, lost in thought. He had noticed the similarity himself, along with countless other small ways that Clara's presence had healed something in their home. But he had also noticed something else: the way his heart raced when she was near. How he found himself counting the days between her visits, the dreams that left him restless and yearning for something he thought he'd never have again. It was Luke who finally confronted him about it, cornering him in the barn one afternoon in late October, nearly 2 months after Clara had first appeared on their land. "You're in love with her," Luke stated bluntly, watching as his father brushed down his horse. August's hand stilled. "That's not your business, son." "It is when you're making yourself miserable for no good reason," Luke retorted. "We all see it. Hell, half the town sees it when you take her to church on Sundays, the way you look at her when you think no one's watching. She's young. What she deserves is a man who loves her," Luke interrupted. "And from what I can tell, that's you, unless you're too stubborn to admit it." August turned to face his son, surprised by the maturity he saw in Luke's expression. "When did you get so wise about matters of the heart?" Luke shrugged. "Watching you and Ma all those years, you taught us what love looks like, even if we forgot for a while after she died." He put a hand on his father's shoulder. "Don't waste this second chance, Pa." The conversation stayed with August all week. The following Sunday, as he and Clara rode back to town after dinner, he found himself unusually quiet, consumed by thoughts of what he might say to her. "Is something troubling you?" Clara asked as they approached Willow Creek. "You've hardly spoken all afternoon." August took a deep breath. "I've been thinking about the future." "Oh," Clara's voice was carefully neutral. "The boys are grown men now. Luke's talking about claiming his own piece of land soon. Matthew's considering a partnership with the blacksmith in town. Even Jedediah's got plans to expand our cattle operation." He paused. "I find myself wondering what's next for me." Clara was quiet for a moment. "What would you like to be next, August?" He pulled the wagon to a stop on the outskirts of town, turning to face her fully. "I never thought I'd feel this way again after Sarah. Never thought I'd want to." He reached tentatively for her hand. "But these past months with you in our lives, Clara, I find myself looking forward in a way I haven't for years." Her eyes widened, a flush spreading across her cheeks. "August, are you saying I'm saying that I care for you deeply?" He squeezed her hand gently. "I know there's a difference in our ages, and perhaps you only see me as." Clara pressed her free hand to his lips, silencing him. "Age is just a number, August O'Connor. It's the heart that matters." She smiled, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "And my heart has been yours since that first night at your ranch, when I saw the good man beneath the gruff exterior." Relief and joy surged through August. Slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, he leaned forward and kissed her. It was gentle and questioning at first, then deeper as Clara responded with unexpected passion. When they finally parted, August rested his forehead against hers. "I love you, Clara Patterson. I don't have much to offer except a hard-working ranch and 3 sometimes difficult sons, but all of it and all of me is yours if you want it." Clara's laugh was bright and joyful. "That's everything I could possibly want, August. I love your sons as if they were my own already." And I love you, your strength, your kindness, the way you've raised 3 good men despite your loss." 2 months later, on Christmas Day, August and Clara were married in the Willow Creek Church. Luke, Matthew, and Jedediah stood proudly beside their father, no trace of the angry young men they had been when Clara first entered their lives. The O'Connor ranch flourished in the years that followed. Luke eventually did claim his own land adjacent to his father's, expanding the family holdings. Matthew partnered with the blacksmith but lived at the ranch, adding a workshop to the property where he created innovations that made their work easier. Jedediah, with Clara's encouragement, pursued further education before returning to help manage the growing operation. Clara continued teaching in town until the birth of their first child, a daughter they named Sarah in honor of August's first wife. She later established a small school on the ranch itself, teaching not only her children but those of neighboring ranchers. The fighting that had once defined the O'Connor household became a distant memory, replaced by the laughter and occasional disagreements of a loving family. On warm evenings, Clara's soft voice could be heard singing on the porch, with August by her side and their children playing nearby. The gentle presence that had transformed 4 broken men into a family remained the heart of the ranch, a testament to the power of love to heal even the deepest wounds.